Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the April version or episode of the Guitar for Vet Workbench. Um, this event is being recorded, so if you don't want to be seen, turn off your video feed. Make sure that you mute yourself, otherwise Paul will do that for us. And, except for the Workbench crew, which today is Matthew and myself, Daniel B. is enjoying a beautiful cruise. I think he's in Nassau today. And so he says hi, and he might actually be on the phone, so who knows, he might even pop in. We'll see. Every good guitar store has a technical and repair section, and they provide services from changing strings and cleaning and some repairs, as well as performing setup and modifications on your guitar. Those services are not free. There are guitar maintenance skills that you yourself can learn to perform on your guitar and save some money, and a trip to your local guitar shop. For some folks, there is not even a guitar shop that is conveniently nearby, and learning guitar maintenance skills are important for keeping your guitar in top condition. The G4V Workbench crew are here to help with learning some of those skills. At the end of today's event, I'll have you all unmute and we can talk some more. Make sure your mics are working then. That everything that is talked about or demonstrated by the Workbench crew is based on the Workbench crew's experienced opinions, skills, and knowledge. Every effort is taken to verify any information put forth, and any references to brands is for demonstration purposes only. The G4V Workbench has no affiliation with any of the brands that are mentioned. So with that, I'm going to take it away in a second. Matthew, give us a wave here, and Matthew will be back with us in a little bit, and he's going to be talking to us about electronics on electric guitars. So, having said that, I'm going to share my screen. And I've got about a 20-minute video I'm going to put you through. I'm going to narrate it, and it's on around a guitar build, and actually, it looks like it's one guitar build. It's actually several builds. So you'll see things like headstocks changing and that kind of thing. But I think it'll give you an idea about building a solid body electric guitar. When I first started building guitars, I literally took photos of guitars that I liked off the web, pulled them into Photoshop, measured them up carefully to make sure that at the 12th fret and the neck joint that the fretboard was the right size, and then began drawing in Photoshop to get my original plans. Since then, there's some other things I want to show you, and the last thing I'll show you after the build is how I've been coming up with my templates for quite a while now. So with that, I'm going to start the video, and I'll walk you through this. So I said, you have to have templates. Now you can go out on the web and you can buy templates like we're looking at right here. I've never actually done that. I've always made my own templates, which I'll walk you through. Here's a few examples of some of my early templates, and you'll see why they're constructed the way they are and how I use them in a minute. Here's an example of some necks, and again, a drawing. And so it really comes down to you have to start with a drawing. Now this is an interesting image. I'm just going to hold on it a second here. So the blue line is the average Stratocaster body, and then you'll see that there's a green for Peavey, a black for Music Man, and a purple one for Ibanez. And so you can see the slight changes in the body shape, the body profile, on comparing one to the other. And so that's one of the things I want to mention is that for the most part, guitarists seem to be, and makers seem to be pretty conservative. You do see some wild looking guitars out there, but they're few and far between, and we stick to kind of the single cutaway, double cutaway, and it's kind of been that way since maybe the 50s or something like that. Here's a drawing that I bought showing neck profiles and thickness at different areas of the neck. And then here's a example of a drawing that I created in Photoshop. Now what I did was I printed it 1-to-1 at a local print shop, and then I cut these out, as you can see here. Notice a different headstock there, but same idea. Use a little spray adhesive and then put it down onto, you know, something to make it nice and stiff, a piece of plywood usually. And then I cut these out, and so you kind of make the guitar profile and neck profile twice. By the way, I don't use the neck profile for my fretting. And then, you know, once I've got it glued down and it's time to kind of cut this out, I clear out all the cavities. And, you know, I'm using a drill here, but you could obviously, well, what I do is I use a drill to start my cuts. And then in this case, I use a saber saw or a scroll saw to cut it out. And then usually there's some rough edges left, and so I use a rasp or files to get my pockets the way I want them to be. And again, you know, this is basically building the guitar profile the first time, and you know, getting things kind of under control, understanding where the curves are. Does it feel good underneath my hands? And then, you know, some fine tuning of the templates, both the templates. Both the neck and headstock is probably the most important part of this, to get that the way you want it. I'm using a chisel here to get some little splinters off and smooth it down, but you'd use a lot of sandpaper. Here is my body blank and my neck blank. And so with my body blank now, I'm going to glue those edge on edge and clamp them down. There's a further step once it's dry that I do, which is to make the top and the back nice and smooth, where you can kind of see a couple of areas where it's a little higher than it should be. So I smooth that down. And then here I'm putting the truss rod into the truss rod. I'm cutting the truss rod on this piece of wood while it's still nice and straight and it hasn't been profiled, to make sure that my truss rod is going to fit inside there. And you'll see in a minute how I handle that. So here's my my template for the neck, and what I'm doing is I'm gluing a spline very carefully to the very center of the neck. And when I'm cutting out my neck, that'll go inside where I created the cavity for the truss rod. You'll notice that I also took some of the neck wood and added on the left and right of where the headstock is going to be, so that it's big enough for me to you know, have my headstock cut out from there. You could use a wider piece of wood. I tend to be kind of, you know, how do you conserve? And so when I get a nice piece of wood, I'm not afraid to glue something on, like you know, headstock ears, because frankly, the glue is usually stronger than the wood is, and this is a nice piece of hard maple. So in any case, that spline then gets placed in nice and snugly in there, and then I carefully cut out the neck profile. Now I'm being careful. I'm kind of using that as a gauge so I don't cut into the template. But what I want to do is get as close to the line as I can without you know, cutting into the template. And now I'm moving on to the body blank. You'll notice that it's much smoother than it was when I first put it there. A lot of people just use double stick tape. I've had accidents with that where it pulls away. So I tend to put some screws in to hold my template to the body blank that I know will be covered up. And in fact, that hole eventually will become where I put my ground wire through in the body to the bridge. And I'm not going to show you anything about electronics today. This is mostly just the body build and the neck build. So, you know, here I am making sure that I'm centered on the center line. Wouldn't be the end of the world since I'm going to color this, and it won't be natural colored, but like to make sure that, you know, if you can see the seam between the two pieces of wood, that, you know, I'm on the center line of the guitar. Now I'm putting in a couple more blocks so that I can, you know, make my pocket for my neck. And remember, the first time I ever did this, I did it all with chisels and drills. I didn't have a lot of fancy tools. I had a very inexpensive bandsaw. Again, I'm a little paranoid about things moving around, so you can see I'm just kind of clamping it down to the bench. And then you don't have to do this, but before I route the pockets, I usually get rid of as much of the excess wood as I can by using what's called a Forstner bit. You can see it there. And that just makes it a little easier for me to route with a router afterwards. And so I go through all the cavities and, you know, go down probably the thickness of that drill. And then, you know, the next step then is to use my router. And I'm using a router with a bearing on it. There'll be a similar one in a bit. And basically this makes my first pass really easy to clear out all the what's left of the chips, or the left of what I didn't drill out, you know, from overlapping holes. And then that bearing on the bit will now ride on my template on the inside of the pockets. And so essentially what I'm doing is I'm cutting pockets into the body one-to-one based on my template. And then I kind of do the same thing that I did with my neck. I'm now profiling this, getting as close to the template as possible, but, you know, not cutting into the template. Although that does happen occasionally by mistake when you're too tired or not paying attention. But I want to get as close as I can, because then I'm going to go and use a router table, and I'll show you that in just a second here, where I finish the profiling and get it lined up exactly with the template. Again, the template will be a guide. So you can see that bearing on the top there. Here I'm doing the neck. So now and then, you know, a spindle sander comes in handy quite often, and then, you know, you could, if you cut close enough, you could actually use that to get all your edges under control. Again, you know, using that router bit to get my profile as clean as I can. Going back to that spindle sander. Time to remove that template and do some handwork. I use a lot of sandpaper. Now I'm putting a round over. Again, I'm doing this on a small router table that I have. The first time I did a round over, I literally did it by hand with this very small palm router. It worked just fine. This is a little bit safer and quicker. Again, there's a bearing on the top there. And I don't go full depth. I take it in a couple of steps. So I keep putting the router bit just a little bit higher. Usually go around 2 or 3 times to get to the depth I want to be with the curve I want to. Now I'm going to draw the belly cut and the front cut. I'm using what's called a hand plane here. If you don't have one of those, you can use files, you can use a lot of things. On the belly cut on the back, I'm using that spindle sander. I actually find that works really fast. Now I'm working on my fretboard, and you'll notice that I've, you know, made X's where my dots are going to be. I've got a little drill press. Again, the first time I ever did this, I used a hand drill and just tried to carefully put the holes where they needed to be. I'm gluing in some plastic, what'll be dots after I cut them off. And now, like last month, I'm using that radiusing block to radius my fretboard. And so you can see that I'm getting down near the end there. Time to put my finishing touches on getting that into the neck, getting my, by the way, that's a little bit of putty, if you will. It dries, but it's just sticky, and it's so that it doesn't rattle. You're not going to see me put any glue on that fretboard, but I do put glue on the fretboard, and then I clamp it down. And then notice the neck is still square, but it has got the profile. So, you know, the thinner part of the neck near the nut, and then the fatter part near the bridge, cutting off the excess of the fretboard. And then this is really a fun part if you do it by hand. It's using different scrapers and draw knives and that kind of stuff to create some facets on the back of that fretboard or that neck. Eventually you get to a rounded, you know, shape, and then you just keep using a rasp and files and sandpaper to get it down to your final shape. Transitions are fun, but they're hard, and you want to spend a fair amount of time because a good feeling neck is a well-playing neck. Just testing to make sure that everything fits together. My scratch plate drops in where it needs to be, and my neck fits in the pocket. This is kind of fun. In this particular scene, I'm trying to do a sunburst. I'm using dyes or tints that are alcohol based, so they dry very quickly. You can put a lot of different coats on one after another to get the colors you want. And so again, this is how I do it. You know, other people might have other techniques. They might paint it on. They might actually spray. They might use an air, you know, an air gun or something. In my case, I kind of like this whole by hand kind of a thing. And, you know, frankly, most of the guitars I build now are either natural or occasionally, you know, one color, or maybe one color with some dark around the edges. All right, finishing up, putting some more dark stain on here. Again, this is an alcohol-based stain, so by the time you rub it in, it's usually pretty dry to the touch, so you can just kind of keep working at it. Give it a few minutes to dry here and there. I guess I'm practicing my French polishing, but even though it's not French polish. And finishing always does take some time. In fact, I had to learn to enjoy it. Especially if you're doing paint or, you know, multi-coats of any kind of, you know, clear finish. You got to put a lot on, and you have to do, you know, quick sanding, etc. You saw this last time where we were refretting. This is basically fretting that neck. I think I've just got a couple of scenes here of me pounding in frets. And then as far as, you know, what I do for a final finish, I think on both these guitars I used a satin finish, not a shiny finish. And I've got some photos. Like I said, this is really kind of two different guitars that I was taking video of back in the day. So here's one, the Fender, a little satin finish on there. And you'll notice my sunburst doesn't look as bright as it should, but I think that's more the lighting in the camera as opposed to how I finished it. This is the blue satin one, and some of you have probably seen this one before when I've been playing it online. That's actually, frankly, one of my favorite guitars that I've built. All right, up next is about how I have been creating my templates from the early days to now. I'm using a piece of software now called Affinity, and it's free. I've stopped the video for just a second. It's free. What they want is they want your email address. They want you to buy other products that they sell, stock photography and AI. What essentially it is, and it used to have to pay for it, but what it is it's a Photoshop killer and a Adobe Illustrator killer built into the same piece of software. So Canva, I think is the name of the company, they bought them. They were been in business for about 10 years. They bought them and they offer well, they call it bare bones, but it's certainly not bare bones. Um, and they basically let you use it for free. You download it to your computer. You do not have to be on the web to use it, but you do when you start it up the first time. You do have to give them your email address and create a password because they are going to want you to buy other products, perhaps. This is a drawing that I got off the web from a book that I bought, honest to gosh, 20 years ago now, probably 15, 20 years ago. A single cutaway, an LP sort of style, and a Strat style. Illustrator lets you do what are called Bezier curves, and that's what that black line is there. So essentially what I do, and it shows you right where, the pickups might go, and it depends on what length your fretboard is. But you can see I'm just grabbing the Bezier curves and moving it where I want it to be. And I think I do all of this in about 2 minutes. I'm going to do the body and then I'm going to do the peg head and change it. But essentially what you do is you kind of come up with your own shape and design. And this is how I get my profiles now. And then what I would do is I would print out the body and the peg head. Again, I don't have a large format printer, so I either print out many pieces of paper and tape them together, or I go to an instant print store somewhere, maybe UPS or something like that, and print it out and make sure that it's full size, it's 1-to-1. So the drawing is actually 1-to-1 as far as the size of a guitar. And if I wanted to add more points to this, I can add more points to it and create, more crazy shapes. Right now, I'm kind of just sticking with round shapes, but I can make, hard edges, hard corners, whatever I want on here. And now I'm going up to the peg head, and it's the same thing here. I can activate that layer and move it around. Here I think I'm adding a point. Yep. And then I get a new point there that I can now pull and change the shape. What I like about this is it gives me a starting point. So I never overwrite the original file. So I have the original that I had gotten from the book. That book is out of print, and I can't find this file online anymore. So if anybody's interested, I am happy to send it to you, but you're going to need, Photoshop and or the Affinity or something like it. You can use Inkscape. That's free as well to move those black lines around. And then again, I don't use the neck. I have my own templates already for my necks. So that's pretty much it, and that's how I do it these days. So with that, I'll unshare, hopefully.
John, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your talent with us. How many guitars have you made?
I'm going to say about 25.
In all electric?
Uh, 3 acoustics, which is a
Oh,
whole
wow.
nother conversation.
Yeah,
That is a whole nother level of complexity. I'd love to have, well, I think we are going to have somebody in the fall. Rick Height is working with Luthier. They're making an acoustic bass, and I'm really looking forward to that
good.
because the engineering that goes into an acoustic is amazing.
Fantastic. And I want to say, I might be wrong, but the video of you working on that guitar may have been the first time I saw you without facial hair.
That's true, and I actually have more hair on the top of my head. Uh, all right. Well, next up, I don't know if we've got any questions now or we can wait till the end. Otherwise, Matt, you're up to talk electronics.
Did anybody have any questions for John before we move on that you wanted to ask now? I mean, I don't mind, obviously, if there was something pressing. If not, though, we will move on. Okay, well, I'm going to share my screen here. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about treble bleeds. We briefly talked about treble bleeds last month. There were some questions, comments, and everything. So I thought I would just go ahead and just do a little presentation on treble bleeds. I was going to do a video, and then I realized that my hands are too big, and you probably wouldn't get to see a whole lot. So I just did the slideshow. But I'm going to run through these slides at any time. Anybody has any questions, they want to ask any questions, or you want to talk about anything, feel free, or we can wait till the end again. So let's talk about a treble bleed. What is a treble bleed? Treble bleed 101. A treble bleed is just a small electronic circuit, usually a single capacitor and a resistor. We solder them to the guitar's volume point, and it's used to keep the guitar from getting muddy when we turn the volume down. Basically, we keep the treble from bleeding out. That's the name of it, and it's why it happens and why it works is when we roll back the volume on our standard guitar circuit without a bleed, the high frequencies, which are the treble, they bleed off to the guitar's ground. And when I get to the photos in a little bit, I'll show you what we're talking about there. But it leaves us with that dull, bass-heavy sound that lacks clarity. And that's why a lot of people who play guitar, electric guitar anyway, especially new players, and I'm not by any means saying I'm not, I'm an old player or anything, but everybody just cranks their guitars to 10 and leaves them. But you'll see that we really don't have to do that. A treble bleed is basically like a bypass valve. When we turn the guitar down, the signal is being turned down by the volume. What the treble bleed does, it allows the higher frequencies to bypass the volume control and go straight to the output jack. So the treble bleed, which I'll show in the pictures later, go from two of the wipers on the volume pot, from the power into the output jack. You're going to skip the ground totally, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. Basically, at 10 on your volume control, your whole circuit is going to be bypassed. You'll get your full tone on your guitar. Everything will be normal. At about halfway down, or 5, as some people like to put it, you'll notice those high-end frequencies will be preserved where they used to muddy up because they're being bypassed to keep the guitar bright and defined. Okay, so there's 3 types really of treble bleeds, 3 common types that are used. And it's all just a matter of what you want to hear and what you like, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes also. But the first one is a capacitor only. It's a simple version. You keep the treble, but sometimes as you do go down on the volume, the guitar sounds too thin. It starts to tinny or whiny, thin. Everybody uses different words, but that's how I see them. A lot of people, though, think, and this is an opinion, a lot of people think that those are, I don't know how we lost my screen there, but a lot of people think that those are more of a vintage sound. The next is considered the Duncan mod or the parallel mod. It's basically a capacitor and a resistor that are wired side by side. It provides more of a natural taper and prevents the tone from getting to that ice picky or thin or whatever words you want to use to describe it. The last is in series, and I've got pictures of these coming up on the next slide, I believe. It's the capacitor and the resistor are wired in a line. A lot of people believe that this maintains a more consistent tone across the entire suite of the knob. And a lot of these things that we talk about with these treble bleeds, when you start to put them in, are subjective. And I'm going to show a way at the very end that allows you to try a lot of different options without soldering in a bunch of stuff and taking your guitar apart. Just to give you a little background so we have the basic understanding of the 2 parts of a treble bleed. The first is the capacitor. A capacitor is like a tiny rechargeable battery. The only difference is when you have a battery, say your phone, you have a lot of energy in it, but it releases it very slow. With a capacitor, you have a small amount of energy, but you can release it almost instantly. The top left cap is one of the guitar. Most people consider the holy grail of the guitar capacitor. It's called an orange drop. I'll let you have your own opinions on that. the other capacitors there. The one thing I wanted to do show is on the far right, the electrolytic capacitor. You'll notice that it's got a red X over it. You cannot use that for this type of application. First of all, it is positive, negative dependent, so you have to have it in a circuit a certain way, where the other capacitors you don't. Once you have the capacitor, you have the resistor. The resistor basically just limits that electrical flow in a circuit. So I told you that capacitor has that energy in it, and you're going to release it. What the resistor does is it kind of slows it down. So think of it like a water pipe, and at the end there's a very, very narrow section that's slowing the water down. You got a 4-foot pipe that goes to 2 foot. And basically that resistor is taking that electricity from your capacitor and slowing it down so that you have a way to affect your guitar tone. So these are rudimentary drawings. Thank you for the internet. The one on the left just shows a capacitor only. The next one is the resistor in parallel, the resistor in series, and then you can actually use both. I will tell you that I have never done one with both, so if you have any questions on that, I'm not going to be able to probably answer them, but that's okay. Here are the ones that I think a lot of people are used to seeing when it comes to guitars. The ones on the left are in series. There's one with an orange drop, and then one with just a regular ceramic capacitor, and then there's one in parallel on the right there. I will say that the two on the left, if you buy those from some of the obvious stores that specialize in guitar parts, the one on the left with the orange drop capacitor is easily $20 on websites, but it's only a couple of cents worth of parts. So something to think about when you start to decide what you want to use. So what I've done is I took the three main guitars, what I consider the three main guitars. Please forgive me if y'all don't. The Fender Stratocaster, Fender Telecaster, and a Les Paul, and just kind of given what the standard values are on these guitars in the world according to the internet. So, you know, guitar forums, guitar articles, these are just kind of standard numbers that a lot of people will tell you they use. So for a Stratocaster, as we know, most Stratocasters have 250K pots, potentiometers, and single coil pickups. And you want to preserve that glassy high as you're coming down off of the volume. So a 0.001 nanofarad, or I'm sorry, that's a microfarad capacitor with a 150K resistor. And like it says there on the bottom, this is usually wired in parallel with a Duncan mod to keep the volume taper feeling natural. The next, for the Telecaster, they also normally use a 250K pot. The bridge pickup on a Tele, as you know, or you may not, but you probably do, is really already really bright, and it's got that icy pick, twangy country kind of sound. So here again, they go with the same, the 0.001 microfarad and a 100K parallel capacitor. Now, some of the guitars that Fender puts out, they actually put some different capacitors and no resistors in there. It just depends on the guitar. Again, these numbers are just based on internet sources and lore. I promise you, if you go to your local guitar store that has a technician and ask them about a treble bleed, you're going to hear a lot different numbers. You'll probably hear a lot of 0.22 microfarad capacitors. You'll probably hear 0.47 microfarad. So a lot of it depends on where you go. Finally, I went ahead and put one for Les Pauls because you got to talk about the humbuckers. If you weren't aware, normally a guitar with a humbucker will have a 500K pot because they have a lot more meat and they're just a lot different. They have that higher pot resistance. The capacitors, again, they go with the 1,000 picofarad or a 0.001 microfarad capacitor with a 220K to a 300K resistor. And that series mod is very popular for Les Pauls because it keeps them from losing their lows and you keep your top end clarity. Just a little chart here where talking about the three types, the simple, the Duncan, and the Kilman, tells you what they had, the capacitor, capacitor resistor, how they're configured, and kind of what they say they're best for. I put this on the screen so that people maybe watching later on would have a screen that they could refer back to. So in practicality, so here we have on the left hand side a capacitor and a resistor, and that's a 2032 lithium cell to give you an idea of the size of these components we're talking about. On the right hand side, I just kind of twisted it on there. You could literally put that on the guitar just like it is without a bit of solder on the capacitor resistor if you wanted to. Those of us who do electronics really don't do that, and I know this picture is kind of blurry, but you should be able to see where I soldered it on a little bit so that it would stay together. So this is a 250K volume potentiometer in a Fender Telecaster. Well, not a Fender, but in a Telecaster. And as you're looking at the potentiometer by the switch here, you see the blue wire, the yellow wire, and the black wire. And the black is also to the top of the potentiometer. So that is your ground. So that's where we're trying to keep your treble from going. So when you solder on the potentiometer, you're going to put it between this wiper and this wiper. So between your power and the one that goes to the actual pickup. And the next picture you'll see that one that I built just kind of soldered on there. No, it's not the best picture in the world, but it was the best I could do for you. But it's really truly that simple. It was a drop of solder on each leg to those wipers, and it's on there. And like I said, I would have liked to have videoed it for you, but with my hands in front of that trying to solder it, you wouldn't have seen anything besides my hands. So the last thing I would say about these, when you start talking about all these different types of treble bleeds, is as you see here, I've got just 2 alligator clips. Those are probably 6-inch wires. They have 2 alligator clips on each end, on each side. You can actually go ahead and clip those to your potentiometer, and then clip them to your new to your different treble bleeds, and you can actually sit there and try out treble bleeds without having to take the guitar apart or put the guitar back together every other time. So it gives you that option of taking, several different versions, because if you'll notice, what's hooked up there is not even the same treble bleed that I put into the actual guitar itself. It's a different one. So it gives you that option of trying them out and trying something new, and using different things. And then when you decide what you do like, then you can solder it in and make it permanent. The other thing I would say, I said make it permanent. That's not really a good statement, because nothing, when you solder something onto the potentiometer, it's never permanent. You can always desolder it. You can always take it back off, and you can desolder it and take it back out and change it if you wanted to. So there is that. And then I believe that's going to conclude the slideshow that I had. Is there any questions anybody would like to ask about any of that kind of stuff?
I'm wondering when you.
Oh, please go ahead.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn it back over to John since he's kind of in charge, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Matthew, I was wondering.
Say I'm retired, so Paul's still in charge.
And Paul is just tired. I want to know when Matt and John are going to open up a boutique shop together.
Well, there you go. The problem is that becomes work, If it's not your hobby, then it becomes work.
I want to be a customer, your first customer, because I always wanted serial number 1 on the first guitar that comes out. So.
Ah, there you go. There you go.
I'm sorry, Kurt, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. I was just wondering, Matt, is there a reason you like one capacitor over another?
So let me, real quick, my Bluetooth speaker just died during all that. Can you repeat your question? I didn't hear anything after I quit talking until now.
Is there a reason why you like a capacitor over another capacitor?
Are you talking about a brand or type of capacitor or a
The type,
value?
There's that orange drop, and then
Right.
there's that others.
Okay, so I'm going to give a very unpopular opinion here, and I don't care. They can roast me in the comments. The world will tell you, almost the guitar world will tell you, the orange drop is the best capacitor. If you're not using it, you just no good. It's horrible. I would bet large sums of money that if I took two guitars, both with the same values of treble bleeds in them, 909, no, one less than a million could not tell me the difference, but could tell me which one was which. There's just I've worked with electronic components a long time. Man, they're all made the same. There's very few companies that actually make them. Some of them have just been, they're like guitar pedals. There's lore. This guitar pedal is the original because it's got a germanium Russian diode in it, and you can't get those anymore, so you can never make it sound the same. Well, you can go out on YouTube right now and find a lot of A/B videos where people A/B two types of things, the old one and the new one, and you can't tell the difference. Most people can't tell the difference. I'm not saying everybody can't. So when y'all want to start roasting me in the comments later, yes, there are some people who can tell the difference, but I would say, in my opinion, now I'm throwing my opinion out here. My opinion is the average guitar player cannot tell you the difference between two different treble bleeds. Any more than they could honestly tell you the difference between a guitar made out of alder and one made out of mahogany, as far as electric guitars go. Electric guitars. Tone wood matters on acoustics. It all matters. It's just how much does it matter. So that's just a thought. That tone bleed that I made earlier, that I put in this guitar right here earlier today. Honestly, because I buy in bulk, that costs less than a penny to make. And if you go buy that same thing on websites that we all know of, they're $25. They're charging you because they soldered them together and all that. Now, granted, the one I made was really inexpensive because it doesn't have that orange drop. If you go buy an orange drop capacitor online, you're probably going to pay $4 for it if you go through one of the big electronics houses. That's what they do. These guitar shops will go buy 1,000 of them from the big electronics houses, and they probably get them for $1 each. And then they turn around and they just solder a resistor on them, which is like a penny, and it's an awesome money maker. But you can do this yourself, promise you. If you don't know the basics of soldering, you can go back and look at what was it, March of 2026's Guitar Workshop.
All right, awesome.
John, can you say, like, from beginning to end how long the process takes to build a guitar?
That's a really good question because, I started building them in my spare time where, I'd work an hour a night or something like that. And they used to take me quite long. I think I could build a guitar, not the finishing, but everything else. I think I could do that in a weekend now.
Oh, wow.
About 16 hours. I mean, really, when you think about it, it's just a slab of wood and another piece of wood, another stick. And, the
Cut
way
and
I do
sand, cut
my
and sand.
necks now is I use those hand tools you saw, but I typically knock off the hard edges with a router now, with a round over. And then I go to the files and that big rasp I've got. The finishing takes a long time, especially if you're doing, multiple coats of a clear coat, because you've got to let them dry and then you've got to, sand them and stuff like that. If you built a semi-acoustic or like a ES335, that would take longer because it's a lot more like building an acoustic. Yeah, but in fact, that's one of the things I wanted to do sometime, probably during the winter. How many could I pump out in a month? Just to see. Probably have to raffle them off here on G4V, but
Yeah, I was going to say, we've got the new Guitar Servette's Gear Exchange store with Sweetwater. Maybe we could start showcasing some of your guitars that,
yeah.
go for a good cause.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. Hey, and what I was going to say to everybody, you can certainly build from scratch like I do, but to do it the first time, you might want to think about doing a kit. And actually, G4V helped me put me in touch with a local company here, a medical company, and they were doing one of these team building exercises. And they bought, I think, I want to say about 16 kits off the internet. And they had me come in and we assembled all the guitars with complete nobody, newbies. I had one guy who played guitar and knew what he was doing. Everybody else, we assembled them in 2 hours. Now they weren't finished; they were just bare wood. But we finished them, and then myself and a couple of my instructors, we strung them up and set the um, bridge height and that kind of stuff. But that was a fun project because there was people who had no idea what a tuner was, where did it go, which way did it face, and the kits, they pretty much pre-drill all the holes for you. So it's really it's assembly, and that's a lot of fun.
John, we had a weekend like that a long time ago. I took my then 13-year-old son to Nazareth, Pennsylvania, which is home of Martin Guitar Factory. There was a local luthier there that did a weekend. These were electric guitars. You would pay him up front, and he'd buy a really nice hard shell case, and you would choose either a Les Paul or a Gibson style electric guitar, and he would buy the kit. You would arrive at it was an old church. He was working on the basement of an old church, and it was very small. He only would enroll like 10 people at a time because he walks around and looks over your shoulder as you're building the kit. The very first day, obviously, he had all the tools, so we got to design our headstock, and then he showed us how to shape and cut it. But yeah, it was Friday through Sunday, and on Saturday, he let us take time off to do the Martin tour. So it was a really, really cool event, but I'd never built before. My son hadn't built before. The night before we got in, we stopped at the Walmart to buy a soldering iron because we didn't even have one of those. And it was really, really awesome. It included the hardware that came with it. When I got it home, I made the mistake of thinking I was now a guitar builder. And I wanted my guitar to sound like Brian May's guitar. And if you know anything about Queen's guitarist, it was a homemade guitar made out of the wood from the fireplace. And he has a set of 5 dip switches, which is partly how he got his sound. And of course, me having one experience soldering, by the time you look at those dip switches and the wirings with each of those, I was way out of my league. I just was way out of my league, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so that was a weekend, right? And you got it together. So yeah.
Great memory. Matthew, do you also build guitars or are you just kind of the electronics?
So the guitar that was in this video, or not video, but the photos here is a kit. It was the
Okay.
first kit that I attempted. Like John, I am not a finish guy. It took me longer to sand the guitar and to put just regular stain on the guitar than it did to do any of the other part. And part of that is because I might have a little OCD. So I was trying to make it perfect, and your first one you probably should not try to make perfect. But yeah, look, I don't know what they are now, but 2 years ago when I bought the kit, it was less than $100.
Yeah.
And I'd upgrade a few things. I changed the bridge. The bridge that came with it was horrid. But everything else is still, I think everything else is pretty much still original. And I mean, 2 years later, I'm still playing it and playing with it. And
Great.
I do agree with John, though. I think that your very first one, instead of trying to get out a router and a table saw, it might be better to go for a kit. Because about halfway through the kit, I realized that, unlike John, I don't want to build a guitar from scratch. I don't have the skill. I don't think I have the skill set to do it, and I don't have the patience. So I'm honest with myself. I would build another kit. I would just I would go into it with a little different attitude this time. That it doesn't have to. It's mine. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not trying to sell it, and It was
Yeah.
fun. It's fun. And I probably will buy another one. I would buy a little better kit than I bought the first time. You learn. So
My first few that I actually handed out that didn't turn into firewood, I gave them to my nieces and nephews, and they were overjoyed, and I made sure they were playable. But yeah, one of the finishing things I didn't even show. I didn't have any video of it, but depending on the wood you're using, you probably want to do a little bit of pore filling.
yeah.
And I didn't show that on the video because I couldn't find any video from it. But that in itself takes time to rub it in, and then sand it off and get a nice smooth finish. And um, again, I tend to leave them more natural, a little bit of stain, and then some clear coat of some sort lately. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And when I started, literally there were no kits. My first guitar building book that I bought was the very first book I ever bought on Amazon back in the 90s. And it was by a German guy who wrote a book that I don't think is in print anymore. And I was just fascinated and smitten and had to do it. But yeah. Any other questions or comments from anybody?
I'll just make one more push. I don't know if everybody's looked in the chat, but Paul put a link in there for a pedal that is good. There it is. There we go. You want to talk about that, Paul, since you put it up there?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for that reminder. So, Peter Dankelson is a guitar player that kind of made his chops, if I got his backstory right, playing in an AC/DC cover band. He's also got his own original music. He's a new Guitars for Vets ambassador, and he's got a wonderful backstory. He's really overcome a lot of medical issues and hearing issues. He partnered with a boutique pedal company called Soulfire and came up with a power drive pedal. This would be for your electric guitar and gives you some nice dirt, is one of his buttons here for muddying up the sound. Sometimes we like to muddy up the sound. I know we talked about what the treble bleed does, but sometimes we like to muddy that up. And so he's giving a percentage of all of the sales to Guitars for Vets for this pedal. And I know they must be doing pretty well because they sold out of the first make of waves. I think that the first set was going to be 500. Let me see, so now they're still saying pre-ordered. I ordered it in April and they're not shipping until May. And then the other link I put into the video was, or into the chat, excuse me, was Ben Morrow, who's another Guitars for Vets ambassador, as well as a virtual instructor. Awesome guy. Plays with Don Felder. Lionel Richie was on tour with Cher when she was touring. Has his own band out in Las Vegas. He demoed the pedal. He actually bought it to a gig and used it, and then did kind of a user review where he showed his amp settings, his guitar settings, and his pedal settings, and talked about what he liked about the pedal and how he stacks it with another overdrive pedal that he uses. So those were the two links that we put in the chat. Any other questions about, while we got John and Matt here on builds or electronics? Matt, I was going to ask you, do you work on amps?
I mainly repairs.
Any good shock?
I'll work on anything electronic if I'm given a chance. And it's funny because I talk about all this electronic stuff, but my preference really is acoustic guitars. That's what's funny about it. I own 50 pedals and all these guitars, but I still prefer my acoustic guitar.
Do you have any good amp stories where you shocked yourself?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
I learned back in the early 90s working on K-Pro computers and some older CRT type stuff to be very careful with life and electronics. And I would always, I guess I should say that every time we talk about electronics is, please, if you're working on electronics, make sure you understand what can and can't hurt you.
That's a good call.
Thankfully, I've never shocked myself across the room.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is maybe a good thing for me to talk about safety. I didn't talk about it, but if you're going to use any kind of power woodworking tools, safety glasses, hearing protection, dust protection, these are all important things. You don't have to have the fancy respirator mask, but have the woodworking mask for dust, etc. Dust can harm you. I have a good friend who turns out is allergic to rosewood, and he's gotten sick a couple of times and had to be hospitalized. I tend to stick to maple, mahogany, and occasionally rosewood for fretboards, but what happened to him scared me. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying use it with caution. And again, protect your lungs, protect your eyes, protect your hearing. And you don't have to own a lot of tools to build that first one. I did it with a drill, a very tiny baby bandsaw, a couple of chisels, and a lot of files and sandpaper, and it was playable. So it just depends on what you want to put into it.
I do like my pin router.
Yeah, I wish I had one of those. I don't, but yeah, the pin router does make things easy. Yeah. All right, folks. If there's nothing else official,
I'll just, hey, John, just real quick, I'll just want to let you know if you're on here, upcoming live events, April 24th is Guitar Office Hours, and that's going to be our third office hours, and that's just kind of been a chance where we have a couple of our guitar gurus with us, and we just open it up and we make it about anything you want to make it about related to guitars, access to lessons, the Cav Arts community. The next day on the 28th, which is going to be Saturday, Danny is continuing his bluegrass lessons. The 25th of April. And that's 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Office hours is 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And then getting into May, we're going to have our second iJam. The initial iJam in April went really well, had a really good turnout for that, and Mike Kelly did an awesome job. So we'll be posting 5 additional songs following Mike Kelly's songbook that we have all in our Cav Art space. And that is always going to be the first Thursday of the month. So May, I can't believe I'm saying May already, May 7th at 5:30 Eastern Time.
Fantastic. A lot of good programming out there for us. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. Thanks for being part of the discussion. Just want to remind you, Guitars for Vets is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to providing relief to struggling veterans through the healing power of music and community. Since 2007, Guitars for Vets has served at-risk United States veterans impacted by PTSD and other service-related trauma. Through our unique 10-week structured guitar instruction program, putting the healing power of music in the hands of our nation's heroes, helping to foster renewal, connection, and community. Thanks everyone for being here.
And John and Matt, thanks again for all you do for it. We wouldn't have Guitar Shop without you guys, so thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you so much.